Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about lists and sequences in Python. For Python, a sequence is any kind of an ordered set of data or information. They're container classes. That means they contain values that contain yet other values. And there are really three main types of sequences that we're going to deal with. Python does have more, but we're going to deal with three of them only today. These are strings, lists, and tuples. Lists are mutable, so that's the one in the middle. That means that they can be changed. If you think about what the word mutation means, it means that something is genetically changed. It's something that can change over time as a result of some kind of accident. And lists in Python can be changed as well. Strings, which you're already familiar with, and tuples, which you've seen when we did string formatting, they are immutable. That means they can't be changed. The general form of assigning something to a list, which causes it to exist, is to say some var name equals some kind of a string value. So here we are creating strings. So in this example, we have a string value Billy, and we are assigning it to the variable name myString. In the next line, we're taking myString and we're assigning its contents to my other string. You can access individual characters in a string by using square brackets and something that we refer to as an index number. Here we're printing myString and we have square brackets with a 1 inside the square brackets. This prints the letter I. Remember that myString is the string Billy, B-I-L-L-Y, and when we say print item number 1 from that string, we're actually printing the second letter in the string. And that's because indexes, in terms of strings, and later on when we talk about lists, they always begin at 0. So the letter B in Billy is item 0, the letter I is item 1, the letter L in Billy is item 2, the second letter L is item 3, and the final letter, Y, which happens to be the fifth letter, is item number 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 things. So that means that the highest index for a string, the highest index number, will always be 1 less than the length of the string. The length of Billy is 5, the highest index number is 4. We can use substrings to access smaller parts of larger strings. Substrings allow us to do something called string slicing. Imagine that we have a variable called goodday, and we've assigned the string hello, underscore world to it. If we print goodday, square bracket 3:9 square bracket, what that does is it produces the string LO, underscore WO. That gives us everything from item number 3 in the list, that's H is 0, E is 1, L is 2, and this second L is number 3, that's where our string starts over here. And it goes all the way up to 1 before item number 9. That takes us to the O in world, which is actually item number 8. If we print goodday 3: and we don't give it a stop value right here after the colon, then we get everything from position 3 to the end of the string. So we see low, underscore world. And similarly, as you might expect, if we print everything in goodday without a starting argument up into position 5, we get everything up to 1 before position 5. So we see the word hello. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Strings are immutable. That means they can't be changed. So if you try to assign the letter M to myString at position number 2, you're going to get the following type error. The string object, myString, right here, doesn't allow you to assign a particular item to it. You can't assign an M to position 2 in myString. You could replace the whole string, myString, with some other string, but you cannot modify a part of the string. Lists are different from strings. They're lists of values in a given order. They're similar to strings in that way. And they have the general form some variable name, some list name is equal to, and then you have square brackets opening and closing, and inside the square brackets, a series of values separated by commas, as many as you like. We create them using the square brackets. That's what tells Python that you are creating a list. Here I've created a list called breakfast, and we're assigning three items to it, eggs, bacon, and the number 4. List items can be of mixed types. You can see that in the previous line. Eggs and bacon are strings, 4 is an integer. Every value in the sequence has a corresponding index number, and those index numbers, as in strings, start at 0. They work the same way. So here's our breakfast list again. If I print breakfast at 1, I'm going to print the item in this list, which is at position number 1, and that happens to be the second item, bacon, because eggs is 0, bacon is 1, 4 will be in this 4 will be item index number 2. So print breakfast at 1 produces bacon. Print breakfast at 1 colon, that means print everything from position 1 to the end, would give us bacon and 4. The len function is really useful. We can use it to find the number of items in a list, and many times there are reasons for us to want to know how many items are in our list. So if we put the list inside the brackets to the len argument, then that will give us the number of items that are in the breakfast list, and currently that's 3. Here's an example where we're using the len function, not the len argument, with the breakfast as an argument in the context of the range function. So we have a function call inside another function, which is the range function. Think about how this works. Len of breakfast gives us the length of the number of items inside breakfast, which is currently 3. So len of breakfast is 3. That means this first line is for num in range 3. That will produce the values 0, 1, and 2. Inside this for loop, we are printing %d colon %s every time we go through the loop. The %d is whatever value is stored in num. That's the num up here, which will be successively 0, 1, and 2 as we go through the for loop. The %s will be replaced by breakfast at num. That means it'll be breakfast at 0 the first time through the loop, then breakfast at 1 the second time through the loop, and breakfast at 2 the third time through the loop until we are done with our range function. It produces this output. Num is 0, breakfast at 0 is eggs. Num is 1, breakfast at 1 is bacon. Num is 2, breakfast at 2 is the value 4. Unlike strings, list elements can be modified. So here we are changing the value of breakfast at item number 2 from bacon to home fries. If we print breakfast at 2, we'll see that we get home fries now. We can also use the append method. Remember that the appendix is something you find at the back of a book? Well, the append method puts new items on the end of the list, in the same way that the appendix is found at the end of a book. So if we go breakfast.append 399, this will add the value 3.99 to the end of our breakfast list. When we print breakfast, we see the 399 at the end of the list. What if we don't want to add to the end of the list? You can use insert to insert an element at a particular index. Breakfast.insert 1, toast will insert the value toast at position 1 in the list. That means we can see the toast item here at position 1, and all the other values in the list have now been moved down in order to accommodate it. And you can delete an unwanted element using the del command. So we can delete breakfast at 2, and that will get rid of the list element that's at position number 2. When we print breakfast now, we see eggs, toast, home fries, and $3.99. A list has to exist before you can add items to it. So if I go mylist.append Billy, in other words, add the string Billy to a list called mylist, and mylist does not yet exist, we get the following error. We get name error. Name mylist is not defined. That's because Python understands that you want to append the string Billy to something called mylist, but mylist does not exist yet, and goes, I don't know where I'm supposed to add Billy to because mylist doesn't exist. If you just want to be doing appending from the very beginning with your list, in other words, you don't have a pre-existing value in the list, then what you can do is you can create an empty list and you can append to the empty list. That will work. So this first line right here, mylist equals square bracket, creates an empty list called mylist, and we can now append things, in this case Billy, to my list, and Python will be happy. You can do it again and again when you keep using append again and again. So here, I'm appending Beauregard to my list. So now my list will have Billy and Beauregard in it. Here's what's in my list so far. If we print my list, we see Billy and Beauregard. Lists grow dynamically when we append to them. So that means they get bigger every time we do an append. If we need to start off with a list of a certain size, then we can do this. We can create something called mylist, and we can assign to it the value none times 5. Our list will have 5 nuns in it after this. Remember that none's a special value in Python. So we can create a list full of anything we want. Consider this. We can say, let my list be equal to 0 times 8. This will create a list called mylist with 8 zeros in it. We can even do something a bit sillier. We could create a list called mylist with 4 Billies in it. What would be the problem with this? If you guess that it's impossible or wrong to create a list with 1.4 elements, you'd be correct. You'd get a type error. Python would tell you that you can't multiply a sequence, which is my list, by a non-integer of a float type, which is the 1.4. You can't create a sequence with 1.4 elements in it. Let's add a few more things to our existing list. We're going to append Cuthbert and Dweezil and Moon Unit. So when we print my list now, we see it has 5 items: Billy, Beauregard, Cuthbert, Dweezil, and Moon Unit. Sometimes we want to access each element in the list sequentially, and we can use a loop to do that. When you create a for loop and the item in this position, right before the colon, is a list, then Python will iterate through the list, grabbing items from the list and putting them in the variable that you specify right after the keyword for. In other words, it will grab the first thing from my list and put it in item and then execute the body of the loop. In this case, printing item in uppercase form. Then it will grab the next thing from my list, store it in item, and then execute the body of the loop, in other words, printing the item in uppercase form. The second thing in the list is Beauregard, so that's why we see Beauregard there. Then it grabs the next thing in the list, stores it in item, and then prints it in uppercase form, which is Cuthbert, etc., etc. We can also use the len and the range functions and then loop through the list in reverse. This can be useful at times. So remember, my list has 5 items in it. The len of my list would be 5. So this first argument to the range function is 5 minus 1, which is 4. So this range function starts at 4, it goes to 0, and because the increment is negative, it's counting backwards. So when we print my list at index, we will get my list at item number 4, then item number 3, then item number 2, etc. This is the list printed in reverse order, and since our range function has a stop value of 0, the last thing we will print will be my list at item number 1. Because remember, the range function always stops 1 before the stop value. Tuples are like lists, but they're immutable. That means they can't be changed. You already saw them in format specifiers with %s, %f, %d. We saw them, that's what appears after the percentage sign in the formatted string. Otherwise, they're identical to lists. You can use commas to declare them, like this, but it's customary to enclose the declaration of a list in parentheses just to make it obvious to the reader. You should use tuples when you need a list of things, and the list should not be modified. There are other types of sequences in Python, sets and dictionaries. Dictionaries can be useful, and we'll look at them if necessary at a later date. Here's the exercise I'd like you to do. I'd like you to make a copy of your boxit program from exercise 17 and modify it so that it will store the strings that the user enters, that are entered by the user in a list. You should think about your program as having 2 separate parts. In the first part, you will use a for loop that will run 5 times to prompt the user for the strings. Each time you go through the for loop, append the string that you get from the user to a list. Once you've done that, you'll need a second for loop, and you're going to use the second for loop to output the formatted strings in box form. Actually, you'll need a row of asterisks before you enter the second for loop, and you'll need one after the second for loop. You use the for loop to print the actual strings themselves with the asterisks on either side. And that's it. Thanks for your time.